Gather round, because I've got a horror story to tell you. About a day me and a partner stumbled upon something in the woods that we'll never forget. It was one of those winter nights that felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something big to happen like the Super Bowl. We had this tip, see? Came from an anonymous source, a cryptic message you'd say, which always adds a layer of mystery to the mix, considering the caller hung up before any further information was gathered. You see, since I was a rookie and the department most likely considered this a prank call, I was sent out with another newbie. We did decide to check it out, but took our time getting there since it was a slow night and we're located in a sleepy mountain town. After about an hour into our shift and finishing up our very late dinner, since at the time we were deep into the night, we started making our way down this remote mountain pass far away and close to our county line. From what I remember hearing from around the station, we don't receive many calls to report to this area, and from what I gathered, many fellow officers are reluctant to go near this forest at the base of the pass. Armed with nothing but our wits and a sense to prove ourselves, we ventured into the forest, foolishly not understanding what we're getting ourselves into, grabbing our flashlights and following a trail that seemed like it hadn't been walked in ages. The further we went, the more things started feeling off. The air grew heavy, the silence deafening, so quiet, failing to even hear the rustling of trees in the distance. It was like the woods were whispering secrets we weren't meant to hear. But we pressed on, because that's what we do, chase down leads, even if they lead us into the middle of the unknown. Eventually, we stumbled upon what looked like an entrance to something long forgotten about. It was half hidden by vines and overgrowth, but we pushed through, curiosity getting the better of us. What we found on the other side was something straight out of a nightmare. The place was deserted, but it felt like it was alive with something we couldn't quite put our finger on. We stumbled upon what seemed to be an abandoned summer camp, exactly like the ones you hear about in old horror stories and vintage slasher films. We split up to explore, each of us drawn to different corners of the place by an unspoken curiosity. The deeper we went, the stranger things got. It was like the walls were closing in on us, the shadows reaching out to grab us. As we entered the abandoned buildings one by one, every creak of the floorboards made my heart skip a beat, and I swear I could feel eyes watching us from the darkness. And then if the air couldn't have become more stiff, the silence was broken by a screaming voice that took me some time to recognize as my partner's. Rushing through the camp and various buildings, trying not to fall through the weak floorboards and porches, I finally ran into my partner. That same partner who was this stone-cold cop was now white as a ghost. I asked frantically, trying to catch my breath, "What happened?" My partner glanced in my direction with wide eyes and muttered the words, "I heard a voice." Looking at him, I punched his shoulder, telling him to shut up and stop playing jokes. My partner, with a shake in his voice, replied, "I'm not joking." Before I could utter a response, I heard it, a soft voice, barely audible above the rustle of the leaves. My heart pounding out of my chest as my eyes finally adjusted to the darkness, as the shadow of a figure began to materialize in the corner of this rundown cabin. Slowly inching closer to this figure, which is now obviously an individual huddled in the shadows. They looked lost and scared, like they'd been running from something for a long, long time. Obviously still startled, my partner and I cautiously approached the figure, which turned out to be a young kid. Either way, they had no business being here, especially since no trails leading to this area, and the only accessible point was a trailhead at the end of this remote mountain pass road where our patrol car was parked. "How'd you get here?" we asked with no response. "Did you get lost on a hike with your family?" No response. My partner and I make eye contact, which is just dimly lit by our flashlights, quietly mouthing to each other, "What is going on?" We knew what needed to be done, so we called for backup on our radios. Oddly enough, to make the situation weirder, there was no response. I know my radio is working since I heard myself on my partner's radio. Due to the situation and the remoteness of what seemed to be a forgotten camp, we started getting that same weird but familiar feeling once again. Almost like something is off, like we're not supposed to be here. Trying to be productive, we decided to try to make our way back to the patrol cars, thinking that our handhelds were just too weak to reach the station and our cars would have a better chance to call for backup. So my partner grabbed the kid's hand, and to our surprise, they got up and started walking with us, continuing to ask them questions during what seemed like an incredibly long walk through the camp and to the trail that would return us to our patrol car. Once we reached the trail, we took one last glance at the abandoned camp, then started making our way back to the car with the kid still by our side. After what seemed like a significantly longer time on this trail this time around, we looked back, and to our shock, the kid was no longer with us. After yelling at my partner for letting go of the kid's hand, we ran back in the direction we came from, and we found nothing. No kid, no trail, and no camp. At this point, we are officially creeped out and ran back to our car, immediately calling dispatch and describing what we saw. Not long after, additional backups soon arrived, and a search of the woods started soon after. Much to our surprise, nothing was found. Absolutely nothing. My partner and I were sent home and told to rest up, but from that night on, I have always questioned what happened and what we saw on that late winter night. I still keep in touch with my partner, who now works for another department in the neighboring big city. We haven't been in contact much lately, but they reached out stating they found something that might explain that night. You see, she sent me an old article which seems to have been hidden by time. In this article, it mentions a summer camp that used to exist in this remote section of the mountains, but a disaster called for the camp to be closed after reports of missing campers. As I thought to myself, does this explain anything? Did my partner and I see a ghost town, or were we both sleep deprived? That's impossible, right, to share the same illusion if we both just needed sleep? Either way, there are still more questions that need to be answered. If you're itching for more spine-tingling horror shorts and scary stories, then go ahead and smash that like button. Stay tuned for more scary stories and immersive experiences released every week. Don't miss out on the next thrilling adventure. Subscribe today and join us on our journey into the unknown.